All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Krauskopf as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana.
What if the WNBA's establishment is secretly trying to destroy the one person who has the capacity to propel the league to new heights? Millions of fans feel that Caitlin Clark is the target of a covert war because of a series of shocking on-court incidents, contentious off-court remarks, and a callous, merciless decision from the highest levels of authority, even though this may seem like a crazy fantasy. The reality of this unfolding tale reveals a league at conflict with its own wealth and is far darker and more complex than anyone could have imagined. Caitlin Clark's selection by the Indiana Fever with the first overall pick was heralded as a momentous occasion that would alter the trajectory of women's professional basketball. She wasn't your typical talented rookie. She was a cultural force of nature and a rating supernova who had drastically changed record books and college audiences. Her matches were attracting more people than MLB playoff games and Stanley Cup finals. She was the golden goose, the chosen one, and she was the only one who made the league transition from commercial to private charters. For years, veterans had been demanding this reform. Arenas that once had an abundance of empty seats were selling out in a matter of minutes, and secondary market ticket prices were reaching previously unheard-of levels. Caitlin Clark had an instantaneous, noticeable, and sincere influence. Everything was set up for a spectacular coronation, a hero's professional debut that would improve the sport overall. But instead, fire mercilessly and relentlessly baptized her. The welcome mat was taken from under her and replaced with a gauntlet. Her first game made it terrifyingly clear that this would not be an easy transition. The physicality was on an entirely new plane. Not only were defenders occupying space, but they were also bigger, more powerful, and faster. They were sending a message with every hard screen, shove, and bump. But this was not merely a strong, knowledgeable defense. It was quite personal. It was a targeted, vicious campaign that seemed to have been meticulously orchestrated to punish her, imprison her, and cause her to question her place in this league. And that unstated message was going to be delivered in the most obvious, unquestionable way possible, setting off a chain reaction of debate that would lift the curtain and expose the darkness. Mashed the resentful underbelly of the league. The worst story was just getting started with the hits she was taking on the court. Everyone in the sports world realized something was severely, horribly wrong during a heated game against the Chicago Sky. While fighting for position, it wasn't a hard screen or a tough box out under the rim. A vicious blindside shoulder check that had no place in a basketball game was delivered by Kennedy Carter. Carter not only committed a foul but also assaulted Caitlin Clark. Clark fell violently to the ground after a cheap, cowardly, and blatant shot that was thrown far from the ball. As soon as the play went viral, a global outcry of dissent sprang out. This was not a welcome to the league moment. This message was sent with malicious intent and was a deliberate attempt to do harm. Carter's haughty refusal to answer any questions about the incident that followed further fueled the flames, along with her girlfriend Angel Reese's evident, joyful jubilation on the sidelines. This one terrible incident, which came to symbolize everything that was wrong, exposed the deep-seated anger and hatred that many had suspected were simmering beneath the league's surface. The WNBA's pathetic initial response, a common foul that was only elevated to a flagrant one following harsh public criticism, told fans everything they needed to know. The league's biggest star would not be protected. Caitlin Clark was by herself. This conflict involves multiple players from a single squad. The entire league was affected by the phenomena. The movement was organized by veterans who felt she had not earned her stripes or paid her dues. While everyone else was talking about the fall and the league's cowardice, a much more horrifying story began to emerge from a place no one wanted to believe: her own locker room. As the season progressed, a very alarming tendency became apparent that online detectives, retired players, and professional basketball analysts could not ignore. Caitlin Clark, arguably the best shooter in the world, would be wide open on the perimeter, hands up, and repeatedly call for the ball, but her teammates would ignore her. The tape was undeniable. Passes would be forced into players who were double covered in the paint while Clark stood alone, ensuring 3 points. The camaraderie among the Indiana Fever on the court was more than just odd. It looked damaged, fractured, and sometimes deliberately sabotaged. Irritated body language and glances at the bench. The group gained notoriety for its tight, silent huddles. The conversation that erupted on social media gave rise to a disturbing and increasingly compelling conspiracy idea. Her own squad was deliberately limiting her touches and freezing her out in order to keep her stats low and degrade her. Were they jealous of the unprecedented amount of media attention, the massive multi-million-dollar Nike contract that came with a trademark sneaker, and the undeniable fact that a 22-year-old rookie was now the focal point of the team's identity? Despite season's standout Aaliyah Boston's enigmatic post-game comments, these doubts persisted. When reporters questioned her about the seeming lack of chemistry, her answers were often succinct, evasive, and full of corporate jargon, which suggested a deeper irritation she was hesitant to voice in public. The narrative was rapidly evolving from a simple tale of a novice struggling to adapt to the horrifying possibility of an internal uprising. In addition to her opponents, were the players who were supposed to be her allies also purposefully destroying her generational potential? This internal struggle created the perfect storm, a disorderly and distrusting environment. At the same time as the league's powerful old guard was preparing to give an even more direct, official, and damaging message, the animosity extended beyond the court. It was being amplified in the media by the league's most respected speakers. Veteran performers from both the past and the present might begin a clandestine but persistent attempt to downplay her significance and normalize the brutal treatment she was enduring. The conversation inevitably became more convoluted and dishonest. Start talking about the very sensitive dynamics of a white player being well known in a league with a sizable black population. As many rightly pointed out, the media's relentless savior narrative unjustly and unwittingly destroyed the incredible legacies of the black women who had worked in relative anonymity for years to build the WNBA from the ground up. This created a perfect storm of professional jealousy, cultural conflict, and righteous fury. The new phenomenon, which signaled a significant shift in the financial and cultural landscape of sports, and the old guard, who believed their huge accomplishments were being mercilessly disregarded, engaged in an ideological war. The rising tide that draws all boats to them wasn't her. Everything they had worked so hard to establish was in danger of being destroyed by the tidal wave of hype that was her. The choice made at the highest level of the sport as a result of this simmering, unspoken conflict that was about to become an official, undeniable policy would leave millions of fans astonished, perplexed, and utterly duped. The most damning proof that there were powerful institutional forces actively working against Caitlin Clark, rather than a rival athlete or a jealous teammate, came from the group entrusted with representing the United States of America abroad. In a decision that defied all rationales, financial, competitive, and otherwise, Caitlin Clark was left off of the USA Olympic team for the Paris Games. The decision stunned the whole world of international sports. It was incomprehensible. This basketball player was the most watched, talked about, and well-liked in the globe. A woman who recently showed that she could provide a niche sports Super Bowl-level audience. Additionally, she was informed that she lacked the necessary skills to serve as a reserve. The formal explanations provided by the committee were blatantly offensive, flimsy, and evident. They brought up her alleged lack of senior national team experience and her ambiguous wish for unity within the team. Even though some of the players who did make the squad had less experience or were having statistically poorer seasons, everyone with a head recognized the real reason. This was the most effective gatekeeping measure available. The official word from the ivory tower of American basketball was, "You are not one of us. We don't care how well-known you are, how many fans you have, or how much money you earn. This elite club has not extended an invitation to you." It was a terrible, self-defeating decision. Given that it was clearly driven by pride, politics, and personal feelings, it felt like a formal declaration of war against the future of their own sport. As the Globe and the sports media went bananas, all eyes were on the front office of the Indiana Fever. Their franchise player, their golden goose, and the sole source of their restored prominence had just publicly humiliated them on a worldwide scale. All of their true allegiances would be revealed by their response. With their star player at the center of a global storm, the world eagerly awaited the Indiana Fever organization's return. Fans, commentators, and sponsors all expected a passionate defense of their star. They anticipated a strong press release criticizing the Olympic Committee's ridiculous decision and a public declaration of unwavering support for their distressed child. Rather, they encountered a soul-crushing, purposeful, and deafening silence. Fever President Lynn Dunn and the rest of the front staff only make corporate-approved remarks about the WNBA season, Caitlyn's bright future, and the importance of the long term. There was absolutely no fight, no fire, no anger, and no passion. And in that dreadful moment of inaction, the terrible decision from the video's title was finally revealed. There was not a single hard foul or a controversial roster snub. Not fighting for their most valuable asset was a difficult strategic choice for the Indiana Fever. To avoid upsetting the league's powerful and resentful elite, they chose to play the political game rather than speak up for the individual who was financially sponsoring their team's recovery on their own. It was a devastating betrayal, a clear declaration to Clark that she was a commodity, an asset to be managed and profited from, rather than a player to be supported and defended. They sold her jerseys by the truckload and excitedly packed their arena to the rafters. But when it came time to protect her from the well-established old guard, they shied away. Even her own organization was willing to momentarily endanger her well-being in order to maintain their tenuous position within the league's ruthless power structure, as evidenced by this cruel economic calculation. A terrible truth about the cruelty of professional sports was exposed by the Olympic snub and this deliberate silence. The entire vast struggle is rooted in a fundamental battle between two powerful opposing forces: the relentless money machine and the rigid established culture. Caitlin Clark is the money. Her starting salary is an astonishingly low $76,000, which she most likely recovers for the league in just one quarter of play. She is personally responsible for generating tens of millions of dollars for the WNBA overall. Teams that used to play before small crowds in smaller college gyms are suddenly packing 20,000-seat NBA venues because she is on the opposing team. The league's national broadcast rights contract, which is predicted to rise in value from a pitiful $60 million to potentially over $240 million, is almost entirely due to her involvement. By every financial measure, she is the most valuable asset in women's professional sports history. She must contend with a deeply embedded culture, as well as an older generation of executives and veterans who feel disregarded, degraded, and vehemently opposed to the significant change she advocates. Instead of seeing her rapid rise as a gift to the sport, they see it as a personal insult, a challenge to their established hierarchy and their hard-won history. At the moment, the league is involved in a confusing and damaging dilemma. Despite its strong desire for the money, importance, and public exposure that Caitlin Clark offers, it is fundamentally reluctant to embrace the cultural shift that inevitably accompanies her.